Does everyone have their microphone where it'll probably work? Looks like everyone's all right with that. My name is Hal Uhrig. Craig Sonner is here with me. To this point in time, I guess most of you recognize us as the attorneys for George Zimmerman. For those of you who are waiting here only in the event that he's going to show up and that's why you're here, slip on out because that's not happening. We do have what we think is a reasonably important announcement to make. I'm going to let Mr. Sonner start first. I'll do a little cleanup and then we'll be happy to entertain some of your questions. Okay?
We want to announce today, as of now, we are withdrawing as counsel for Mr. Zimmerman. We've lost contact with him. Up to this point, we've had contact every day. He's gone on his own. I'm not sure what he's doing or who he's talking to, but at this point, we're withdrawing as counsel. If he wants us to come back as counsel, he will contact us. We had contact as of, I believe, Sunday. In the last couple of days, he has not returned phone calls or text messages or emails, leading me to believe that I can't go forward speaking to the public about George Zimmerman in this case as representing him, because I've lost contact with him at this point. I still believe that he was acting in self-defense that night. Nothing that I've said about him or this case has changed in any way. I just can't proceed to represent a client who doesn't stay in contact with me.
Let me provide a little bit more detail and context for that. Last Thursday, before Mr. Sonner and I went to New York to meet on Mr. Zimmerman's behalf with a number of national media organizations, Mr. Sonner was accompanied to the bank by Mr. Zimmerman's father for the purpose of setting up a website by which people might make donations in order to help support him and hopefully pay for a defense. We went to great lengths to make sure that that website was set up in a way that the PayPal account paid directly into an account on which his father had the control and the signature rights, not us. So there'd be no possibility of anyone claiming that we were doing something untoward about that. Mr. Zimmerman was aware that we were doing that. His father signed the cards. We left with the expectation of getting that site up in time to announce it for national media. We did, in fact, make that site's name known to the national media, and it was publicized to some extent, although it was, for technical reasons, didn't get posted up in time. On Sunday, we lost track of George in that he would not return our calls, and we couldn't get hold of him. We had no reason at that time to believe there was anything suspect. But on Monday, we began fielding questions about, did we know anything about the I'm the Real George Zimmerman, or the GeorgeZimmerman.com website? And our initial response was, well, that's probably bogus. George hasn't talked to us about that. We don't know about it. So we started making inquiries and frankly confirmed that he, through friends or family, had in fact set that site up and it was legitimate. We immediately began telling the media, disregard the earlier website we gave you that we had set up. Go with the one that we now know that he set up. Cleaner for us. We were happy enough with that, but disturbed that he had not communicated with us. We started reaching out in every way that we knew how to get him. Eventually, the two newest developments are that we learned that he had called Sean Hannity of Fox News directly, not through us, and we believe, I can't confirm this, we believe that he spoke directly with Sean off the record, and he's not even willing to tell us what our client told him. The final straw, if you will, or the final decision-making point was today we spoke with the Special Prosecutor's Office out of Jacksonville. We have been working over the weekend and diligently trying to set up a meeting between Mr. Zimmerman and the Special Prosecutor's Office because, quite frankly, we continue to believe that once that part of the puzzle is completed, given the evidence as we understand it to exist, and given the rest of the facts and the law as we know it exists, that this prosecutor, who's elected not to go with a grand jury, would in fact make a decision. We were hopeful that decision would be to not inform against him and not to seek an indictment. That was our intention all along. We heard today that George had contacted the prosecutor's office directly. One of the things every defense attorney tells his client is, don't talk to the prosecutors, don't talk to the cops. Frankly, don't talk to anybody until we get control of the situation and do it through counsel. We were a bit astonished and had some conversation back and forth with the Special Prosecutor's Office. They are professionals as well. We're impressed with the professionalism of the Duval County State Attorney's Office, Angela Corey's office, Bernie, the others involved in the office up there. and they told us what we expected was, we're not going to talk to a criminal potential defendant or suspect or target of investigation without counsel. We're just not going to do it. And they told him that. He then called back after some conversation with us and said, that's not a problem. I don't really have any attorneys anymore. Those guys were just my legal advisors. I'm not sure what the distinction is, but in his mind there's a distinction. And at that point in time, with us unable to communicate with our client, with him not taking the advice that we had to just basically don't talk to other people, it's his absolute right to talk to whoever he wants to. And it's his right to choose whatever counsel he wants to choose. And if in the future George were to come back to us and say, look, big misunderstanding, I was under such incredible pressure. You can't imagine what it's like hiding in a room, trying to save your life, treated like a mushroom, for those of you who know the second half of that joke, and not being able to communicate with friends and family openly. I can't go to the grocery store. Perhaps the pressure of that pushed him a little over the edge, and he reached the point where he said, I'm just going to take care of this myself. Whatever his thought process was, he may explain at some later time. Our thought process is that we're professionals. Craig Sonner PA, Hal Uhrig, the defense group, we do this for a living. We try to do a good job of it, but we are not going to put ourselves out to the public as continuing representatives for a client unless he makes it clear to us that he wants us to be his representatives. So for that reason, it's not so much that we're resigning. We're just announcing to you that we can no longer represent him until such time as he may come forward and ask for that help more formally and in a different context than we've had so far.
Do you think he's gone into hiding because a decision could be imminent about prosecution?
Well, just a moment. I promised the first question. Who's here from Fox 35? Valerie?
How do you know how old they are? How do you know this is a fraud? How do you know that he's not saying?
Okay, number one, we have a pretty good idea of where he is, although we didn't want to know the exact location. Number two, we know his phone number. We know that whenever we call it, that phone number goes to voicemail. We know that's the phone number by which he contacted the special prosecutor's office in Jacksonville, and that's the number by which they contacted him back. We're comfortable that the information that we've gotten, both with regard to Fox News National and with regard to the special prosecutor's office, accurately is information attributed to George. We're not divulging an attorney-client privilege because he didn't say that to us. We're getting it from what we believe to be the most reliable source on the waterfront, and that's the special prosecutor's office. I'm sorry, what was that? I don't believe he's told him anything except that he wants to meet, and because both of us have been prosecutors, I will be shocked if they meet with him without some attorney, whether it's us or somebody else. Craig, you start picking out.
That's right. Specifically in trying to help you guys locate him or to further get more information about whether he's your client or not.
What's your question?
The family. How helpful has the family been, particularly George Zimmerman's father?
Up until Sunday, around Sunday or Monday, very helpful. We had a good working relationship, and it's just been the last couple of days that we lost contact. And when I was not able to make contact with him today, and he's not returning phone calls, that's when we reached the conclusion. It's like, well, it's been 2 days, and there are things going on. It's time. I can't keep going out and meeting with the media and giving interviews saying that I'm talking with George every day, because now, as of Sunday, I'm not talking with him every day. Well, yes, I'm concerned about what's going to happen with him, because I do believe that he was acting in self-defense that night, and I hope that if he wants to come back, if he wants me to represent him, of course, I'll represent him, but at this point I don't have contact, and I can't ethically go forward and say that I'm representing George Zimmerman when I haven't talked to him in a couple of days, and he's giving interviews apparently. I mean, that's just the rumors I'm getting, and setting up websites that I don't know. There are a lot of things going on that I don't know about, and so I need to resolve this time.
The PayPal link on the realgeorgezimmerman.com website, is that contributions to that not going to the account that the father set up?
I don't know where those are going to George. From my communications with George, it is going to George Zimmerman.
But not the one you set up with his father?
No, on Thursday I met with his father, and we went to a bank, and we set up a bank account. And of course I can't do it for George because George wasn't there, but we did it for his father. We're going to have the PayPal be linked to that. That didn't happen.
This right here has been trying.
Do you think he's gone into hiding deeper because the decision about prosecution could be imminent?
No, I don't think that's what's happened.
How much money has the PayPal account?
We have no idea.
Do you think he's still in the country?
Let me get someone else. What's your question?
Are you basically using this news conference as a way to reach to him and hope he sees this on TV and then contacts you guys and establishes contact and representation?
No, I'm doing it out of an ethical obligation to. I can't keep coming and talking with all the media and saying, yeah, I'm representing George Zimmerman when he's giving me the indications that I'm not representing him. He's not communicating back with me. He's going and doing things without consulting me. And, him setting up his own website, that was fine. I wish he would have told me. I mean, I prefer it that way because that money is for George and not for me, and I don't want my hands on it.
One at a time, right here.
Have you ever actually had a face-to-face conversation with George Zimmerman? Ever? I mean, you said you're reasonably sure where he is. Have you ever met him face-to-face?
No, I've not met him face-to-face. It's all been through phone calls and meetings with family members.
And can you confirm he's in the country? Can you confirm he's in the area? Do you know?
I'm not, because I'm still concerned about his safety, I'm not going to give too much detail. He's in the United States.
I'm going to take this one.
No, I don't know. Is there another question?
I mean, as far as the money, the PayPal.
Let me take this. Our fear is frankly not so much about the money. We were initially concerned when we heard about a website that we had not known about before that somebody else had set this up and was taking advantage of this situation. It appears pretty clear now that the website really is George Zimmerman's. Therefore, whether it's in his sister's name, father's name, his name, whatever, we believe those funds are going to him. Our concern runs deeper than that. This has been a terribly corrosive process. George Zimmerman, in our opinion, and from information made available to us, is not doing well emotionally, probably suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome. We understand from others that he may have lost a lot of weight. Our concern is that for him to do this, when he's got a couple of professionals out there working as hard as we were for his benefit, to handle it this way suggests that he may not be in complete control of what's going on. We're concerned for his emotional and physical safety. By the way, let me repeat what Craig said earlier. We absolutely still stand by everything that we've said in this case from every outlet that we've been on with regards to what we believe the facts and the law are. We hope for the best for George Zimmerman. We hope for the best for the Martin family as well. When this case is eventually over, and just like Casey Anthony, it will eventually be over, it's our hope that the Martin family can begin completing the grieving process for their son and that George can get his life reinstated a little bit.
There's so much faith in him. Why leave him now when he needs you most?
We're not taking the position that we're leaving him. We are open to George Zimmerman, but he's got to reach out to us. The communication can't be one way. For us to legitimately tell you or anybody else we are his legal representatives, he's got to affirm that. If he does that, we'll help him.
Can I ask you to back up just a second?
Sure.
When did he speak to and was it the special prosecutor herself?
I'll let you take that.
Secondly, if I could, did he ever actually contact you guys to begin with? Did he actually ever hire anyone?
How did he contact you to begin with?
He contacted me by phone, and the initial agreement was that I would handle the case pro bono up until charges were filed. So, well, you did, I don't know. I don't know how you got my name.
His
and
father
my phone
found
number.
the name.
When did the special prosecutor, when did he speak to her? What day was that? When did he speak to Corey?
When did he speak to Bernie?
Oh, he called the special prosecutor's office, but the prosecutor wouldn't speak to him because he had representation. Today.
Are you concerned by being so public about this right now that you might be hurting your case a little bit? Does it work?
Nothing that we're saying here today is going to change the evidence. Nothing we're saying here today is going to change the law. If we're correct, and we believe we are as to what we've said so far, the evidence that you have seen and the evidence that we have reason to believe that exists is in the possession of the prosecutor and law enforcement, taken together and applied to the law, we frankly believe that the correct decision will be to not charge him. And nothing we're saying here today should have any effect on that.
With all due respect,
Let me let Craig do this.
I'm not going to say anything about where George Zimmerman is, his location. I think it's been kept a secret from a lot of people, and I'm not going to reveal that now. This is not at this point. People are coming to me as the attorney of record to answer questions, and after 2 days of no contact and him reaching out and doing things that I didn't know about. I can't hold myself out as the attorney of record at this point. Absolutely everything I have said up to this point about the case and about me believing the case, it's a case of self-defense, that it's not a racial issue, I absolutely stand by everything up to this point. However, it wouldn't be ethical for me to continue to hold myself out as his attorney when I haven't spoken to him in 2 days, and I know his phone works, and I know he's not returning my messages, he's not returning my texts, and he's not returning my emails. He won't even give me a collect call. I can't hold myself out at this point as being his attorney and truthfully tell you anything. That's why I'm stepping back. But up to that point, everything that I've said about the case and that this being an issue of self-defense and that the media has put the wrong spin on all the evidence that's out there and tried to convict the wrong person on this, that George Zimmerman was acting in self-defense, I absolutely stand by, and I urge all the media to look at what's there, go based on the evidence that's out there, make your decision based on that, not on just raw emotion.
Has George ever seen a therapist like that?
Say again now.
Has George ever seen a therapist? Because it appears that this man is falling apart, he's grasping at straws. Has he been seeing anybody to talk to about his problems that he's going through?
He's been in hiding, so I'm not sure how much he's been able to get therapy for that while he's been in hiding.
Let
me get some. What's your
logistical?
I think at different points he's been alone. I can't speak as to the last couple of days if he's been alone or not.
Here's the logistical problem for George. George can't get in a car and drive down to some office center to go in and see the psychologist. George can't go down to the 7-Eleven and buy a Diet Coke. There's a bounty out on his head. Whether it's believed to be a real bounty or not, it's out there. He probably watches more of this every day than he should. He's largely alone. Whether that means he's absolutely alone or not, he's at least emotionally alone. And you might even say emotionally crippled by virtue of the pressure of this case. And so, whereas you or I could probably get in the car or have a loved one drive us down to a medical center, no one notices us when we go in. He's going to come back out to a view that looks like this.
Given all those factors and considering all what you have, with due respect, are you concerned, are you so afraid that he may do something to himself or the monies that he has go out of the country? I know you say he's in the U.S. right now.
Based on what I know of him to this point, he's not going to flee the country.
What about the other, the worst, the last, the possibility of him doing some harm to himself?
I don't believe so at this point.
Right, you got the initial phone call from the man who represents George Zimmerman.
Correct.
You still have not been able to face-to-face talk with people. How would you represent you haven't met him?
Well, we had conversations, multiple conversations. We talk every day, communicate through text messages and email and that way. So the communication was there, and at that point he did want me to be his counsel. He has a Sixth Amendment right to counsel of his choice. And if at any point he decides he doesn't want me as counsel, that's his absolutely right, and I can't stand in his way of making that choice. I took his case and everything up to the day of filing. That if there were media issues, which I didn't ever expect this much, I offered to do that pro bono up to the point of filing, and then we'd work something out. I really believed in his case and believed in his innocence, believed that he acted in self-defense, and that's what my interest was in the case. And now if he doesn't want me to represent him anymore, I ethically can't go forward.
First week of March.
George Zimmerman owes me no money.
Why have you not met with your client?
All right.
Is that something that George said that he didn't want to do? Or
Okay, let me get your question, then I'll get you.
whose decision was it for you all not to meet face-to-face?
That was just a logistic. He's in hiding, and it was better for him to stay hiding and stay in hiding and stay safe than to come to my office where there are lots of people watching him, and there have been death threats. My concern was that he was safe. We didn't have to necessarily, preferably we meet face-to-face, but it's not absolutely necessary. And I think we've been able to handle the case by phone up to this point. But there were face-to-face meetings scheduled.
Whoa, time out. Let me supplement that a little bit. Probably in 99.44, 100% of the cases, you meet with your client, you sign a representation agreement, you represent them after that. However, for attorneys that practice here in Central Florida with 54 million tourists a year coming to Disney and Universal and oftentimes getting arrested and flying home and hiring us from Minnesota or from California or from Europe, it is not totally unusual to not meet with your client personally. We do it all the time. In this case, I will not tell you where George Zimmerman is because I don't know. But for those who are engaged in the late Easter egg hunt looking for him, you can stop looking in Florida. Look much further away than that, which is also a reason why we didn't meet with him, because it was simply not reasonable. Our hands were busy, A, with the law practices that we already have, and B, with doing everything we could possibly for his benefit and meeting with the press and talking with the prosecutor and so forth. So while it may be unusual, there's nothing much to be read into the fact that we had not yet had the opportunity to sit down and look him in the eye.
So you say he's not in Florida?
I said that.
What's your question?
What was the last communication either of you had with George Zimmerman? What was it? What was the substance of it?
I'm not going to tell you what the subject of it was.
Sunday.
But it was, I believe that I communicated with him Sunday, and I believe it was a text message.
But to follow up, so through all the verbal conversations and the text messages that you guys had with him, was there anything in his, verbal demeanor that would indicate this happening?
No, this was a surprise to me.
Sir, if a habeas is issued, do you have an opportunity to assist in his apprehension in any way?
No, I'm not on the case now. So that if there is a capias issued, it'll be up to law enforcement and for George to do that. Up to this point, I would have, made that happen. I always, any client that I have, if there's a warrant issued for their arrest, we make arrangements for them to turn themselves in. I don't aid and abet people in trying to.
If you are only reasonably certain where he is, you said you're reasonably certain where he is, but you didn't know you didn't see him. Basically.
I know 100% what his phone number is.
Okay, but you were just going to rely on him to just respond to you and turn himself in on his own.
Yes. Yes, and when you deal with clients, there has to be a certain amount of trust and honesty that you will take. When I tell you that you need to turn yourself in, you'll turn yourself in. We did agree on that.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't represent anybody who would tell me, well, I'm going to run if they issue a warrant for my arrest. I wouldn't be their attorney because then I'd be here doing what I'm doing today again.
In hindsight, now you're saying that your client is not returning your calls, is having ex parte conversations with news media and doing things that now don't seem so reasonable. So are you confident now that he would turn himself in if he had to? Are you now confident?
I think he would. He's in contact. He's in contact with law enforcement. He's calling the prosecutor's office. So I'm guessing that if he's going to call the prosecutor's office, if they said come turn yourself in, and he wanted to give his statement, I'm assuming that if they said, well, we need you to come in, turn yourself in, that he will do that.
He indicated to the prosecutor's office that it was his intention and goal, if they would let him, to quote unquote come into the prosecutor's office and to answer their questions there. If he was anticipating an arrest, they wouldn't have to run very far to catch him.
When was the last time you talked to Robert?
What's the last time you talked to Robert?
About 20 minutes ago.
Oh, we're not going to tell you what he said.
I'm not going to tell you what he said.
No, we're
No.
not sure. That's only been represented to us by people who had no particular reason to lie to us. It didn't come off the internet. Let me put it like that.
Yes.
You mentioned earlier that you would be able to bring, that if charged, you would bring Zimmerman into the police station. I don't know if you
I would make arrangements for him to be brought into the police
System.
department. Yeah, I mean, I don't bring people in my car in. They have to. I can arrange transportation, but I never. Clients don't ride with me in my car. Just.
And frankly, transportation, had that ever occurred, had basically been arranged. But at this point in time, because we're not being asked to represent him, we're not going to get in the middle of that. We still, frankly, are optimistic that there's never going to be a need for him to turn himself in. We're very hopeful that if the law is applied to the facts, the state attorney is going to announce that she's not going to charge him, in which case none of that makes any difference. If she does charge him, it's now going to be up to him to either communicate back with us and seek a different arrangement, or to find somebody who can assist him in that.
As he moved to, I guess the question is, it was intimated that he was sort of in the area a couple of weeks ago. Has he moved farther away since then?
I don't know who told you he was in the area a couple of weeks ago. I
It
didn't.
was intimated.
A lot of intimations are sometimes misread.
Mr. Sonner, what's your thoughts on Jordan Blake, NAACP president of the Sanford County chapter, saying that he got a call from Corey stating that he was going to be very happy with her investigation. Have you heard anything about that? Your thoughts on it?
I haven't heard anything about that.
Let me also say this: in our conversations with Angela Corey in her office, I would be very surprised if she was giving anybody an actual heads up. You talk about intimations. Somebody might have read something into her tone of voice, but that's a very professional set of people up there, and I would be shocked if someone called to give a little heads up to somebody about whether they're going to be happy or unhappy.
Can you explain why no one can seem to substantiate here in Sanford the account about the letter and his going to bat for the homeless man and self-defense? We've talked to a lot of people and no one will vouch for this.
I don't know. That wasn't part of this case. I've heard that.
You don't remember
I remember it, but you're asking me a question about. I didn't go through an investigation to substantiate all those.
You'd confirm the authenticity of the letter.
The family wrote a letter.
Two things, yeah.
I confirmed that they wrote the letter. Everything that they said in it, I didn't go back and fact check. That's your job.
Well, it's unchecked.
Any indication
Well,
that the charging decision is imminent? Any indication of that?
You know what? When you talked about intimations earlier, I would guess, and this is a guess, this is not on some kind of personal information, that the decision one way or the other is not that far out. The simple reason for that is not because Corey's office has told us that. It's simply because we believe that pretty much all the information or most of the information that they need in order to make a decision is now in their possession. The law hasn't changed, and I don't think they have anything to gain by dragging this out. Until we get a decision, there's no closure.
Have they talked to the girlfriend in Miami?
We don't know. Don't know.
Without telling us what Mr. Zimmerman told your father, can you tell us sort of, does he seem upset with the two of you? Does he seem worried for his son? Can you characterize the conversation?
No, it was a matter of fact conversation, and I can't really go into the details of what we discussed. But it was. Does he know where George is? I'm not going to tell you where George is. So let's move on to another question. And if I know somebody who knows where George is, I'm not going to tell you that they do, and I'm not going to tell you who it is. Is there another question? Yeah.
I'm sorry, say it again. Why does he have a good case?
Look at if you'll review the evidence. Actually, look at all the evidence that's out there. There was a statement made by Trayvon's father. There was a statement made by Robert Zimmerman Jr., Robert Zimmerman Sr. There's been a police report released. The 911 tapes. Listen to all of them. Listen to the unedited ones, and put the facts together. And I think you'll see that it will come together as a self-defense case. And when the rest of the evidence comes forward, I believe you'll see that he was acting in self-defense that night. Well, I believe there are going to be forensics and so on that were done in the investigation by the Sanford police and by the FDLE, and that will come out. I think that will reveal the details that will cause you to believe that George Zimmerman was acting in self-defense that night.
Well, we're not going to do that, but let me do this in terms of the specifics that we do know. And I just want to connect a few dots. And all of these dots are already out there. This is nothing special and brand new. You just got to connect them. Question one was, is George Martin a racist? That may not be the first question in order of things happening, but it's one of the big questions that's out there in the court of public opinion. The evidence is that he comes from a racially diverse family. His mother was Peruvian. He mentored two young African-American children, he and his wife. When the funding for that ran out, they spent their own money to do that. That will be able to be confirmed. Took the young boy down to see Dwight Howard. They took him to other special activities. Doesn't sound like the activities of a racist who's out there trying to hunt people down. He's not a member of the Aryan Nation, if you will. He's got friends, including Joe Oliver, who was brave enough to come forward and stand up for him. He's got other African-American friends who, frankly, were afraid for their jobs and their safety to come forward in light of the public furor that has been raised in this case. There's absolutely no evidence, direct evidence whatsoever that he's a racist. Well, but he made 40 phone calls. Yeah, he's a neighborhood watch guy. He does that. Well, we found 17 of them, and like 8 or 9 of them, the guy turned out to be black. Well, that's true, and in every single instance, he was asked, just like in this one, does he look white, Hispanic, or black? And he said, yeah, he looks black. It's not like, oh my God, there's a black guy in the neighborhood, send the cops. There's no evidence whatsoever from the time that the earth cooled through right this minute that George Zimmerman ever has been or is racially motivated to go and stalk somebody, racially profile them, or as a congressman said, hunt him down like a dog and shoot him in the street. There's nothing to support that. Here's what the facts show. The facts, as the statement given by George Zimmerman the night that he talked to the police, a story repeated by his father, a story repeated by his brother, and you say, well, they're all in on it. Really? Guess what? The absence of witnesses to the contrary doesn't mean that it happened the way you would rather have the context come out. So the only living eyewitness to exactly what happened is George Zimmerman. He's been consistent, and the evidence is consistent with what he said. I'm sorry. We had the situation where we have the eyewitness that says the guy in the red sweater was on the ground, the other guy was on top of him beating him, and the guy on the bottom was yelling for help. He looked at me and asked me to get help. I went in to call 911 for the guy in the orange sweater. We know who that was. It's George Zimmerman. And while I was inside trying to call 911, I heard the pop. Nobody but George Zimmerman purports to know the most important 2 or 3 seconds in the entire incident, and that's who swung on who first. Zimmerman says, and you hear part of this on the 911 tape, I'm following the guy because as I'm on the way out to go grocery shopping on Sunday evening at Target, I see this guy. It's getting dark. He's over 6 feet tall. He doesn't say that, but that's what he sees. He's kind of slinking along behind the back of the buildings. If you've seen the photograph, there's a sidewalk that goes between 2 sets of townhouses, and here's this guy that he doesn't recognize. He's a neighborhood watch guy. He knows his neighbors. Doesn't recognize him in a gated neighborhood. Doesn't mean he's doing anything illegal, but if you're in the rain, in the dark, going along the back side of residences with no apparent purpose, it's at least suspicious enough to take a moment to check it out. He calls the police.
You can see somebody from behind those townhouses from your car, which is on the other side.
I'm sorry, say that again?
How could he have possibly seen somebody who's behind the townhouses from his car, which is on the other side of the connecting building? You can't see behind him.
At some point in time, he sees him, and let's say this. We know from what he said while he's on the phone with 911, and the purported call with the girlfriend, who as far as I know nobody's talked to, she's the one that says, he said, it's raining, I'm getting up by the buildings. If you look at the buildings, the overhang is about this much. Unless you're up against the building sliding along, you're not getting any protection from that. That's nonsense.
Can I ask you why?
Now, let me finish first. All right? So at any rate, he goes down this sidewalk, and we hear the 911 tape. They say, are you following him? Yes. Well, we don't need you to do that. That's reported as he was ordered to stop. No, they said, we don't need you to do that. And his answer was, okay. He then talks to them, and much of this was cut off of the 911 tape. He says, okay, I think actually ask him, see if you can get an address. If you're not going to follow him, when the cops get there, can you tell him where he went? So he goes down the sidewalk, gets the address, and he's headed back to his car when, according to him, he's accosted by Trayvon Martin. He turns him around, says, do you have a problem with me? He says no, and in response to which Trayvon Martin, in a horrible exercise of bad judgment, says, well, you do now, and hit him in the nose, which we later turned out broke his nose, dropped him to the ground, got on top of him, and is hitting him. We've had people say, well, how do you explain the fact that Trayvon Martin is face down and George Zimmerman standing up? This doesn't take rocket science. George Zimmerman's still alive. That's why he's standing up, and the reason that Trayvon is face down is because George was on his back, and Trayvon was face down on top of him when he got shot and fell the rest of the way down. There's no great mystery here unless you start with the conclusion and try to work back to put it in context the way you want it. Too much of that has taken place. You're going to find that there's injuries to the back of his head. Forget the foggy tape at the police department. The EMTs will have a report in there that they treated him. They cleaned up the blood. His nose really is broken. You're likely, I would suppose, to find grass stains on the bottom of George Zimmerman's clothing and not on Trayvon's. There's all kinds of evidence that they may have forensically that we don't have access to. We're not entitled to it. You're not entitled to it. But all the evidence that has come out is consistent with the story that George Zimmerman has told. It is inconsistent with the storyline that the family, I don't know about what the family really wants to believe, but we've had some people come to town who are only relevant in an area of racial strife. On February 26th, that Sunday morning, most of us went to church and sat in mixed congregations, and we didn't think we were in a community of seething racial violence and tension. Sunday night, all of a sudden, after this incident happens, people start coming to town who frankly have a business model based on driving division in racial communities. They've been making speeches, having rallies, pumping their fists in the air, setting out bounties for people. No justice, no peace. But as long as justice is defined as arrest him right now. Actually had an attorney for the Martin family, who as far as we know actually went to law school, get on the air and say they need to just go ahead and arrest him and let him prove his innocence in a court of law. Really? In the United States? I don't think so. So anyhow, your question was, why do we think he's got a good self-defense? It's been mentioned before, those who followed it all, the Liam Neeson's situation of his wife falling once in the snow, hits her head, dies. There was a guy recently beaten at a baseball game. He's now taking the rest of his food for the rest of his life through a straw or an IV. Shaking babies. When you shake a, you can't shake me, I'm too fat. But if you get me on the ground, you can hit my head into it and accomplish the same thing, which is to smack my brain around inside the skull. That would put any reasonable person in reasonable fear of serious physical injury, and under Florida law, that entitles you to use any force, including deadly force, to defend yourself. In this case, a gun was used. People say, well, how can you shoot an unarmed man? You know what? The unarmed man can kill you if he continues doing what he's already doing.
Is it true or not that the lead investigator didn't buy Mr. Zimmerman's story?
I don't have any idea, but let me tell you this. I was a police officer, I was a police sergeant, I was a police legal advisor and a prosecutor. I really don't care what one investigator thought. They're so often wrong, and they're so often supervised, and people with more stars and stripes on their shirt get a chance to make those final decisions. And the decision after calmer heads were brought into the table were, hey, we got a statute that says we should not arrest if self-defense is claimed and there's some reasonable evidence that supports it, and there's not pretty much overwhelming evidence to contradict it. Someone tell me what the evidence was to contradict it. Does that answer the question as to why we think he had a pretty good self-defense argument?
Mr. Fury, you seem to have made this case very much about race. You said the first question, the number one question, is whether or not Zimmerman is a racist. First of all, who has called Mr. Zimmerman a racist? I haven't heard any member of Trayvon Martin's family say that, but you seem to really be fixating your defense of him.
Let me say why I do that, okay? And it has absolutely nothing to do with the court case unless the feds came in and made it a hate crime based upon whatever criteria they applied. The reason it's important is because we've had two cases going at the same time. There's the case of whether or not George Zimmerman acted in self-defense and therefore was justified in his actions, which resulted in the tragic death of a 17-year-old young man. But anyone who has not been living in a cave and who has a television anywhere near him has seen the rallies, read the reports on the television, read the reports on the internet, heard Congresswoman get up there with a microphone and say, Trayvon Martin, innocent young boy, stalked, racially profiled, stalked like a dog, and shot down in the street. Someone tell me that they don't think that that was a racially charged statement by that Congresswoman, all right? And it's not just her. It's Jesse Jackson. It's Al Sharpton. It's the guy that came down from Baltimore. It's people on the net using terms like murderer, all right?
That has to do with race, though. You seem to be saying a lot. I mean, I've noticed even his father as well. The statements that they're putting out really seem to fixate on black people who've done this, and they didn't stand up for Sherman Rare. And it seems like you guys really, at least specifically your statements, sir, have been very...
If you don't believe that this has been largely couched in racial terms, listen to what I'm saying. If you don't believe that this has been largely couched in racial terms in the media, you're not watching the same TV stations, you're not reading the same blogs, you're not looking on the internet. Many, listen, I'm not going to give you a list right now. Give me an hour, I'll send you 4 or 5 pages of them, all right?
Could you please?
Happy. Just, give me your email address. I'll be happy to take care of that. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this in terms of the way, and I'm taking a shot at the press when I say this. Something terrible happens, and it gets couched. If you go on the internet today, on some of your stations, you're going to see a picture of a 12-year-old young black man named Trayvon Martin, picture taken 5 years ago, looks like he's just leaving choir practice. Doesn't look much like the picture that he posted on his Twitter account, shooting the famous middle finger at the camera and choosing a website name that I won't even repeat. And you got a picture of George Martin from a booking photograph from years ago, from an arrest for which he was eventually exonerated and the charges were dropped. Those are the pictures. Why not have the picture that is on some sites now with George as he looks more today in a coat and a tie and Trayvon Martin at over 6 feet tall, instead of characterizing this as big mean man tracks down poor little boy?
Sir, can you give us a recap for those of us who came in late while you called this today?
I can't.
Just a 30-second recap.
No.
So let me ask
Yeah.
you, because you were describing both of you as precisely when things took place, but there's something I don't understand, is that when the event is Twin Peaks
Okay.
place, and you say actually that George Zimmerman went to check because he said, okay to the police, I'm going to subdue
said, I'm not going to follow this young teenager.
Right.
So I'm going to go and check the number. The number is in the other side of the street. That means he sort of left.
There's a difference between following and still being able to see the guy go down between the buildings. Okay. First of all, even though it's our position he did not follow him after he said okay, it would not have been unlawful or even improper to follow him. You can follow me home if you want to. Heck, you can come in for dinner, all right? If you say something ugly to me, hopefully I'll disagree, but I'm not going to turn around and break your nose. What becomes important is the moment in time when somebody confronted somebody and the first person went from sticks and stones can break my bones. Words can never hurt me. The first person that swung, as far as we can tell, was Trayvon Martin. That's what changed the character of this entire situation from one of what might have been an unfortunate misunderstanding into a crime. And the crime was battery against George Zimmerman.
But still, that means he's not turning his back to go and check the number. He's still following.
He'd already gone. No, he had to go to the end to get the number, and he's coming back towards his car.
Last question, sir. Do you agree as an ex-police officer that this case, as much as racism raises questions about gun laws in this state, and that this might not have happened if he hadn't been carrying a weapon?
Absolutely not.
Isn't the statute a bad one?
No, the statute's not a bad one. It wouldn't have happened if either one of them left a half hour earlier or a half hour later. Chance plays a large role in things that wind up happening. This is a gun law consistent in about 23 or 24 other states. What it basically says is nothing new. It says if you are confronted by someone and physically attacked and you are in reasonable fear for your safety, you're entitled to defend yourself. The statute's got four legs to that stool. You got to be someplace where you're allowed to be. Both of them were. You got to be not doing anything illegal. As far as we know, both of them were. And you cannot be the first physical aggressor. Not the first, hey, I want to call you a bad name or call your mama a bad name. The first physical aggressor. The only evidence, and most of the forensics support the fact that that was Trayvon Martin. When that happens, and let me tell you what the mortician said about Trayvon Martin. What he said on his little announcement was, other than the bullet hole, I didn't find any injuries on Trayvon Martin. And I guess he was intending to say that he didn't see the. Did you want to outshout me, or did you want to go talk to somebody else?
We can go there.
I'm answering a question. You can stay out of it. Anyhow,
Answer it,
what the mortician said was, I didn't see any injuries. He didn't have a broken nose. He didn't have scars on the back of his head. You won't find any photographs of those. You won't find a witness to come in and say that. All right? The gun law is a good law because what it does is it gives honest citizens the right to carry a weapon. I've got a carry permit. Many people in Florida have a carry permit. The Second Amendment permits us to have weapons. There are people that are anti-gun to the bone. I disagree with you, but I respect your opinion. But it doesn't make it a bad law. If you take the guns away from the good people, then the punks and thugs know you're unarmed and you're open season. So there's all kinds of reasons. It's a discussion for another day that would take hours. I don't take any exception to the law itself, and I don't think that the law in this case is going to be applied in such a way that it's unreasonable. Depends on what the provoke is. If following you is provocation, it's not allowed. If you follow me and curse at me all the way, I can't turn around and physically attack you over it. So provocation is not being at the same location at the same time. Whoever decides to turn it from a war of words into a war of fists does so at their peril. It's a matter of bad judgment. I'm sorry. No, I'm not accepting the fact. I'm saying even if there had been, as far as we know, George Zimmerman was on his, the only account from anyone who was actually there is that there was no confrontation. He had gotten the address and was walking peacefully back to his car when he was confronted by Trayvon Martin. I wasn't there. I don't know. Don't have a clue. What I'm telling you is the only evidence supports that version. I don't know that he got a chance. Our understanding is he turned him around, said, do you have a problem with me? He said, no. He says, you do now, and hit him. Not a lot of chance for casual conversation. I wasn't there. I don't know.
So I still don't get how we can get back to the car to see the number of the building. The numbers of the
Let's. Are there any other questions about the case? I mean, this will be litigated at some point. You'll have all the evidence out there, and you can review it. You can review it yourselves.
How do you know
Maybe
it's
you
going to
have.
be litigated?
We don't.
You don't.
How can you say it will be litigated?
The evidence will come out. It'll be released eventually.
If there's no charges filed, we would expect that the evidence will then no longer be subject to the exception of the public records law, and whatever evidence was used by the prosecutor to make her decision is eventually going to be made public. I have no inside information on that. As long as she needs.
Is your being here today in a way to send a message to Mr. Zimmerman? And if so, feel free to look right here and tell him.
We've already sent him the message. He's certainly welcome to call us. We would be happy to continue to represent his cause, but we cannot ethically do that under the circumstances where we find ourselves, where we know he's communicating with the prosecutor, contrary to our advice, communicating with the media, contrary to our advice, and not answering our calls. It's just that simple.
So why do you do this press conference then?
To make the announcements, we're not on the case, so you don't have to keep calling us to ask us for interviews.
And if there was no need for the press conference, we had an awful lot of questions, didn't we?
Yes, indeed.
All right, thank you.
Thank you all. We appreciate it. Have a great day.